Hi there. We are going to get into a little self-release work in the chest. Now, in particular, we're going to focus on sort of the upper regions of the chest, and so the muscles that we will be accessing are some of the superior fibers of pectoralis major, and then we're also going to be reaching pec minor. These two muscles are pretty important muscles in a lot of pain syndromes and a lot of injury scenarios for not only the shoulder girdle, but also for the neck. And so you may notice that this work can free up quite a lot of sensation and also degrees of freedom of movement in the shoulder girdle, in the neck, and locally in the chest as, for example, an effect on your breathing. So this is a really big one, and I would recommend coming back and doing this video a few times, especially if you notice that after the work you feel quite a lot of relief. What we're going to need is a rad roller. If you don't have one, the link to them is down in the description below. Something that you might be able to substitute for a rad roller in this particular instance is even a block itself. You may find that a tennis ball is the right size, but probably not the right density. Maybe a squash ball, although in this particular instance, it might be a little bit too small. So if you can find something relatively close to this ball size, that's what we're looking for. And a stack of either books or blocks. I like the harder block on top so that it provides a little bit more of a stable surface for the rad roller to be on. We're going to start. Now you could do this work up against a wall. If you're doing it up against the wall, you're looking for the corner of the wall or the corner of the door frame so that you can position the ball and lean into it without your face being into the wall. Where we're going to place the ball to begin with, if you find your collarbone, we're going to be working just below that. And then we're going to start out close to what is called the deltopectoral groove. And it's kind of the valley that is created when the pec muscles and the deltoids meet. You'll notice that there's a little bit of a valley in there. And that's going to be, as that comes up close towards our clavicle, our collarbone, that's sort of going to be our first point. Maybe a little bit closer towards the midline, but not too much closer. That's going to be a starting point. And then we're going to work incrementally towards the sternum with each new spot, okay? There is going to be a lot of real estate for pec major that we're going to miss in this video, but we'll cover that another time in a different video. So we're just going to focus in these uppermost regions of the pecs here. Place the ball on your props or up against the wall, and we're going to come on down, position the ball where I just described, just below the collarbone and just next to that deltopectoral groove, that little valley. And then as you're comfortable, you're going to release a little bit of weight into that pressure. I would recommend with the hand that is on the same side as the ball, I would recommend that that hand is at rest. You sort of tuck it away and let it be at rest. That usually will give you a little bit more space for that pressure to settle into. And then as you are comfortable, give that spot incrementally more weight until you reach the perfect level of sensation, and then pause there. Being that this is really great for freeing up some range of motion at the shoulder girdle, this work here could be a really wonderful precursor to any of the shoulder girdle videos that we have here in the library. It might prepare you with a little bit more space And then the movement practice can help you to control that extra space, that extra range of motion. If you find that these spots start to change relatively quickly, you might decide that you could put a little bit more weight into these points before we move on. You might also not decide that. You might decide to stay still, and that's okay too. With any movement here, I would strongly recommend to keep your limbs stationary. But if you'd like a little bit of movement, my encouragement would be to take a deeper breath. And if you can think about directing your breathing into that point that is being pressed on, that will help to get a little bit of movement in more of the intercostal muscles, deeper movement, and underneath the muscles that we're pressing into, and that will help to provide just a little bit more sensation. And then when you're ready, we're going to move on to the next point. And that next point is just going to be very slightly closer towards the midline. We're going to try and get 3 points out of this work. So move the ball or the massage tool about 1 centimeter towards the midline of your body. And then reposition yourself as needed to find the right amount of pressure for that spot. You could again take some of those extra deep breaths, directing your breathing in towards that pressure point. And that could provide an extra little bit of sensation, but it also can provide, especially on the exhalation phase, you might find that there's even more space, even more relaxation to be found. Once you feel that degree of change in sensation, we've got our 3rd point. Gradually releasing the pressure, moving the ball now in very nice and close towards the midline. You're still on the tissue of pectoralis major though, and you're still just below the collarbone. Find that spot and gradually add that weight back in. These muscles, in particular pectoralis minor, tends to, in a lot of us, tends to get a lot of what we call trigger points. I may have mentioned this in some other videos, but I'm not going to get too much into the physiology of trigger points in these videos. But essentially what trigger points result in is sometimes it's relatively significant pain syndromes, and sometimes those pain syndromes are not located at the point of the trigger point. So what you might notice when you are here giving massage to this area is that when you get a certain spot, sometimes you feel it connect all the way down your arm and perhaps all the way up the neck and into the head. And if you feel that, it's usually a good sign that you found a trigger point. And if you give it a little bit of time, a little bit of work there, that gradually that trigger point or those trigger points will release. The howler monkeys approve. When you feel this spot change, gradually release your pressure. You might take a little moment to give that side a little bit of extra movement, and then we're going to switch to the other side. I'm just going to change my angle for this side to perhaps give you a different view of what we're doing here. Hopefully it's helpful. On the second side, again, we're going to start very close to that deltopectoral groove, that valley, just below the collarbone. So we're going to position the ball there. Come on down onto the ball. Let this arm be at rest. I like to just tuck it underneath and leave it. Position yourself so that you can get the right amount of pressure for this particular spot. And gradually settle in. If there is breast tissue to navigate, you probably want to be a little bit closer to the edge of the blocks or the books, whatever support you have at home, and have the ball located a little bit closer towards the edge as well. Settling in here, you might direct your breathing a little bit deeper and in towards that point of pressure to see if you can get a little bit extra release. One of the many movements that this will assist with at the shoulder girdle is if you are lifting your arms up overhead and you find that your overhead range of motion for the arms is restricted. Oftentimes this particular work will help to, at least temporarily, free up more range of motion. If you want that temporal nature of those changes to become more permanent, then you are going to need to practice movement in those ranges frequently. So that's especially where I would couple this work with some kind of active work that you'll find in some of the other videos here in the library. When you feel that sensation change in that first spot, come on off the block, off the prop, move the ball slightly in closer towards the midline, reapply some weight, Find the right amount of sensation for this spot on this side. And take some nice deep breaths through the nose. Taking some good time to really settle in. This really does tend to be one of those areas of the body that needs a little bit more attention. Oftentimes we spend so much time working in front of our bodies with our hands that our shoulders tend to move forward in space, and with that movement we tend to get extra tightness here in the chest. When you do feel that change, reposition for the third spot in nice and close to where the collarbone and the sternum and the chest meet, in that corner, still on the muscle though. Get a little bit of pressure there. Try to make sure that the arm is at rest on that side. And resume your breathing through the nose. Perhaps also taking some mental notes while you're here of any differences that you notice between sides. We do tend to be one side dominant, and so you might find that one side maybe needs a little bit more attention, a little bit more time. And if you do notice that, feel free to allocate that time accordingly. So if you need to revisit the other side, or if you'd like to stay here longer on this side, if you've got more work to do, please take some extra minutes to do that. I find that it's always best to stay until that spot feels complete before moving on for the greatest benefits. when you are ready to release that pressure, go ahead and come off your support, off your props. I would really encourage you after doing that to test out some overhead range, to test out some other movements of the shoulder girdle and see what effect that work had. Maybe also check in and see how the neck is moving. Oftentimes work here in the chest can really free up some movement in the neck as well. Test that out. There are other videos that you can use in this library to guide you through some of those movements of the shoulder girdle if you'd like. I really hope that you find a lot of benefit from this work. Again, this is one that you probably want to return to because of the nature of our lives being in front of us. Very often, these muscles tend to need some good maintenance work. So keep this one on your favorites list and come back and do it as many times as you can throughout the week, okay? Thank you for joining me, and I will see you again very soon.